Hey, 7th grade, Mr. Hildebrand here. This is a recording of the lesson from September 8th, Tuesday, September 8th. So if you missed class on Tuesday, September 8th, you can check this out to get caught up. We started our new unit. Okay, last week we finished up ancient Egypt and we finished that test. So this week, starting our new unit on ancient Greece. We started with a little bit of geography. We watched this video on YouTube. If you just type in physical geography of Greece, it's about 2 minutes long. You can watch it. It talks all about the mountain ranges, the different seas that are nearby, the agriculture, things that Greece is famous for. But the big thing we wanted to key on was the sea, like the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea right around there. Basically forced the Greeks to become very good shipbuilders. And they did a lot of trading that way. They ended up fighting a lot of naval battles that way. Some of the early Greeks even turned into pirates because they were so comfortable in the sea. So they're great sailors. And then we also talked about the mountains. Lots of very tall mountains in Greece that actually kept cities separated from each other. So the reason why ancient Greece never became one big unified empire, one big country, until much, much later was because the mountains kind of kept people apart. But it did make them very proud of their individual city where they were from. So we watched that video. We also watched this quick introductory. If you just type in ancient Greece educational video for kids, you can find it. It's just a quick introductory to the ancient Greeks, some things they're famous for, like philosophy, theater, the Olympics, different things like that. It talked a little bit about their religion, polytheism. They believed in many gods and goddesses. And then we talked about mythology and how the Greeks and their history is often wrapped up in myth. We talked about two types of myth, an origin story myth, or a myth used to explain where something came from. So, for example, if we're trying to explain where fire came from, well, we don't have any actual records from that time period. Nobody was there with a video camera. They didn't exist. And so, ancient peoples made up stories about how they got fire, and those would be myths, an origin story. Kind of like the Avengers wasn't the first Marvel movie, but each superhero kind of has their origin story, their own movie before that one. Then we talked about myths that are meant to teach people lessons. And we watched this one right here, King Midas and his golden touch. You can watch that one as well. And basically how we broke it down and tried to figure out what lessons the ancient Greeks were trying to teach people through this story. Then what we did was we hopped over here to Nearpod. And we clicked through and learned about the very first ancient Greeks, kind of like in the United States. Before the United States existed, there were people living here, Native Americans. And, they were the first people on the continent of North America. And then, just like, the Native Americans, there was also some first people in the areas controlled by the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks, we did look at this map real quick, just of where it is. We did look it up on Google Earth so we could kind of see where it is compared to us. It's over in Europe, above North Africa, surrounded by the ocean here. There was the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. On our Nearpod, we kind of went through and talked about the two early groups of ancient Greeks, the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. We talked about how they were kind of kept separate from each other because of the mountains, but then they both developed shipbuilding skills and sailing skills because of the ocean. The Minoans were on the island of Crete. Both started out as farmers. Eventually, the Minoans are going to start trading the stuff that they make and get rich that way. But the Mycenaeans, they kind of go a different route. They take their shipbuilding skills and their sailing skills and they become pirates. And they start stealing from people, which ends up putting the Mycenaeans in a lot of wars. And they develop a warrior culture. We did look at a couple of VR, virtual reality things. This is the island of Crete that you can kind of go check out on your own, just to check out the geography. We also did one of the Peloponnesian Peninsula where the Mycenaeans would have been. And all the mountains that were there. We talked a little bit about the religion, how both were polytheistic, and their kings were often their priests or their religious leaders as well. And I believe, we also looked at a VR of the palace at Knossos, which is where the Minoan king would have lived. Just a cool historical site on the island of Crete you can still go visit today. It's thousands of years old, still there. We talked about the Minoans loving sports, and they had a special sport called bull leaping where they would jump on and off the back of a bull. We talked about their style of art, the frescoes, which is what this is, two-dimensional paintings there. And then we talked about their politics, how they were monarchy, so they did have kings who would make the laws. And we talked about their economics, how they were farmers, and then traders, and then the Mycenaeans eventually became pirates. Social structure, we talked about how women in the Minoan culture, they practiced household duties, but they were allowed to socialize and go out in public and go to the sports and occasionally go hunting and ride chariots and have some of the fun that the men did. That the men would join the navy and the army. They also would farm and fish. The Mycenaeans, they had a more strict and a less equal social structure. They had the king at the top. They had traders and farmers and business people in the middle, and then the Mycenaeans had slaves. So at the very bottom, they had slaves, or they called them tenants, working at the very bottom. Okay. And that was pretty much it for the lesson. There was no new homework on today, but check out tomorrow's video because there is going to be a new assignment for the week. All right, folks, if you have any questions, as always, send me an email.